Hello, boys and girls. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to look through our notes together on perfect squares and square roots. So let's first start talking about what they are and look at some vocabulary. So, a perfect square, and make sure what I'm going to ask you to do is fill this out with me as I fill it out as well. Oops, let me restart just so I have a little bit smaller cursor. So, a perfect square is a whole number whose square root is an integer. The square root of a given number is a number that when multiplied by itself equals the given number. So let's place square root down here. I'll put itself right here. And finally, every positive number has a positive and a negative square root, and we'll talk about that. So as an example, the first thing I have here is a positive square root. And this problem says square root of 36. Well, the square root of 36 equals 6. And what they mean when they're asking us for a square root, they're asking us which number would you square to get 36. And I think we all know that 6 times 6, which is equal to 6 squared, equals 36. So really what we're doing is we're just doing it in reverse. They said the square root of 36, what did you square to get there? Or you would have had to have squared 6. Another way that I look at it, it's like saying if I had a square, and here's my square right here, with an area of 36, how big would each side be? Well, each side would be 6 long. My next one is a negative square root. Notice that I have a minus sign, also known as a negative sign, out in front of the square root. So that means when I solve this problem, I'm going to get 6 again, but this time the negative is waiting out front, and I have to attach it to the 6. The last thing we're going to talk about is a positive and negative square root. And this is something you haven't heard before, but this symbol right here means that the answer could be positive or negative. It's called a plus minus symbol. And that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like we have a plus on top of a minus. So this says plus minus the square root of 36. So what would that equal? Well, it could equal positive 6, because that's what the plus stands for, or it could equal negative 6. Now, in reality, this won't be on your test. However, it's good to know that whenever you have a square root, as an example, like the square root of 36, there's more than one way to square a number and get 36. I could say negative 6 squared, and I could get positive 36. Or I could say 6 squared and get positive 36. So that's where this plus minus is coming from. Because we don't know, did they square 6 or did they square negative 6 to get 36? Well, in reality, either one could happen. So what they do to show that is that plus minus symbol. Now, you won't have that on the test. But when we talk about it in class, I want you to get used to calling that symbol right there our plus minus symbol. Let's go on to my next slide. Please make sure you're staying along with us and filling out those notes. If you have to go back and pause the video, you absolutely can. So for our test, we're going to have to memorize the first 20 perfect squares. So when I do this, when I think of perfect squares, like I said, I think of a model. I like to think of a square. And what I like to think of is that the perfect square, right, would be the area, and we're trying to figure out what the outside of it would be. What would be the outside of it? Because as an example, if I said 1 for this first one, let me do that, we would know that 1 times 1 would get us an area of 1. Now that's an easy one. Let's go on to some more. If I had an area of 4, meaning the inside here was 4, how big would each side have to be? Each side would have to be 2 and 2. So when you fill this out, how did we get 4? Well, they must have had 2. If I had a square with an area of 9, and I'm going to draw one over here, this will be my example. If I had an area of 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that'd be like saying the square root of 9 equals, and each side is 3. So we could say it equals 3. Make sure you go ahead and write it down just like that and copy it. Make sure you also fill out this square right here. What we're going to say is a perfect square. That will be the inside. That will be the area is your perfect square. And the length of one side is your square root. I'm going to abbreviate square, and I'll say root. And you can abbreviate square as SQ period if you like to too. Let's continue to finishing our list. We just did that the square root of 9 would get us 3, while the square root of 16 would get us 4. The square root of 25 gets us 5. The square root of 36 gets us 6. The square root of 49 gets us 7. The square root of 64 gets us 8. The square root of 81 gets us 9. The square root of 100 gets us 10. So that is the first half of perfect squares. And these are the ones you might have remembered already. It's this next group of perfect squares that you're going to really want to try to remember. So if this said the square root of 121, that answer would be 11. The square root of 144, that answer would be 12. The square root of 169 is 13. The square root of 196 is 14. The square root of 225 is 15. That's my favorite perfect square. The square root of 256 is 16. The square root of 289 is 17. And we're going to go so on and fill the rest of these out, all the way up to 19 and 20. So our goal is to remember this. Now, while we didn't write it down here, realize I can also put plus minus for all of these if I wanted to. And I don't want you to write this down. I'm going to write it in blue so you don't write this down. I do want you to pause the video and make sure you write everything I just down in red. But realize, even though we're saying that the perfect square, if the perfect square is 4, the square root is 2, it can also be plus minus 2. Well, I should use a different color than that. Hold on, let me change colors real quick. I clicked not on blue. There's blue. So really, I could actually say plus minus, because really, negative 2 times negative 2 could get you 4, and so could 2 times 2. And I could say plus minus for all of these. But like I said, for this test, we're not going to have to worry about that. You're not actually going to have to worry about that until you get to Algebra 2. But for this year, I still want you to hear about it. But we're just going to stick with the positive normal numbers for now. Let's go on to our final slide. And our video is almost done. Please make sure you are filling all of this out with us, because I will be checking this in class. So finally, we have some problems here. We have the square root of 289. Feel free to pause this test right now, or pause our notes right now, and answer this in our Edpuzzle. What do you think it is? Well, the square root of 289 is 17. If you said 17, good job. Make sure you have it down if you didn't. Our next one, we have the square root of 4/16. If we have a fraction like this, what we have to do is find the square root of the top number and the square root of the bottom number. So do this one with me. You don't have to pause the video. Just fill it out with me. The square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of 16 is 4. So all you end up doing is you square the top and the bottom. The only problem with this answer is we didn't simplify it. And by 8th grade, we need to make sure we are simplifying every single type of problem. So 2/4, let's simplify that down to 1/2. Move over to the next one. This is a plus minus problem. And like I said, these aren't going to be on the test, but I still want you to be familiar with them. If you have an answer that says plus minus the square root of 16, that means there's actually 2 answers. We know the square root of 16 is 4, but because that plus minus symbol, the answer could be positive 4 or it could be negative 4. There's actually 2 different answers, and they're both correct. Next, we have a few word problems, and these will definitely be on the test. It says, if the area of a square is 49 inches, how long is each side? And when I think of this, think of our models we made. What they're just saying is that if we had a square and the area was 49, like we did in the last problem, how big would each side be? Well, it would be 7 and 7. So we want to say that our answer is 7 inches. And make sure you label in inches because that's what the problem was asking about. I'm going to have you do this next problem on your own. So I'm going to read it to you, then I want you to pause the video. It says, if the area of a square is 225 inches squared, how long is each side? So pause the video right now and see if you can answer this one on your own. If you're back, the answer for this one would simply be 15, and you should have said inches just because they talked about it being in inches over there. And finally, this is a little challenge problem. It says, if the area of the square was 225, same problem there, what would be the perimeter? Now that's a little bonus challenge problem. Remember, perimeter is the outside. So what they're saying is that if we have a square and the area was 225, we know that each side would be 15 inches long. All 4 sides would be 15 inches long. So we'd have to add all 4 sides together. And if all 4 sides were 15 inches long, that would mean that the perimeter, the outside of the square, was 60 inches. And remember, perimeter means you're walking around the outside. And finally, it says you want to put a fence around your garden with an area of 400 inches squared. So I'm going to draw a little picture here. We have our fence, and I'm going to draw it over here where I have a little bit more room. Here's my yard. The area is 400. If the area is 400, that means each side is 20 long, because 20 times 20 gets me 400. If it says, if it costs 12 inches per square inch of fencing, how much would you need to pay for the fence? So even though we know each side's 20, we need to first find the perimeter, because if they're building a fence, they're building it around the outside. So let's add that up. 20, 20, 20, and 20. Also, 20 times 4, that's the same thing. That's going to get us 80. So we know it's going to be 80 inches, but that's not the final answer because we're not done. Even though it's 80 inches, we're trying to figure out how much we would have to pay. Well, if it costs $12 per square inch, that means that we need to go ahead and multiply. So we all need to take our calculators, and in our calculators, we need to do this 80 inches, and we need to multiply it by this $12. And if we did that, our 80 times 12, we'll get our final price. We would have to pay $960. Thank you so much for watching. I'll look forward to practicing this with you more in a couple seconds in class.